6:26 in Trinidad and Tobago. We are continuing to get reactions in the aftermath of yesterday's announcement from Petrotrin, from the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, about the shutting down of the refining operations of Petrotrin. Approximately 2,600 permanent jobs to be affected. 1,700 jobs in the refining area will be terminated, and indeed there was to be some rehiring, and we are waiting for more details to come from Petrotrin. But as you would expect, lots of reaction. We've heard from the chairman of the UNC, David Lee. We're now going to hear from the long-time former education and research officer of the OWTU, now leader of the Movement for Social Justice, David Abdulah. He's on the move, but he's on the line with us. Good morning to you, David. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Faisal. Good morning to all of the audience on this call.
You're sounding a bit faint, but hopefully if you could just speak up, that we'll be able to hear you clearly. I caught quite a bit of your dialogue and your interaction, sometimes a testy interaction with Thackeray Driver last night on CNC3 in relation to the different options for Petrotrin. His perspective was, look, something had to be done. It has to be done. Move on. What is your perspective?
Well, everybody agrees that something had to be done. And in fact, I was a member of the Petrotrin Review Committee, which was set up last year with the union's agreement, because the union met with the Prime Minister early last year, and I helped to facilitate that meeting. And it was agreed to set up this review committee, and the union was to be part of it. I was one of the two union representatives on the committee. So the union and the whole country knows that something has to be done with Petrotrin. But the issue is what? And what was proposed, or announced, not even proposed, what has been decided and announced yesterday is madness. Let me just cite a proverb. It's actually a Japanese proverb, I think. It says that without action, daydreaming, but action without vision is a nightmare. And what we had yesterday was a nightmare being announced. And I know you have Dr. Diane Douglas coming on shortly, and I want to congratulate you on that program and because of family issues and so on. And yesterday I was there, Bob, until Jose, President General of the Union, made the announcement. And there were women who were very emotional. There were men who were extremely quiet. I've never seen oil workers so quiet. And it was like a few. And the point is that the option that the board and the government has agreed to, absolutely wrong option. And so that is the issue. We have to push back to get the government to change its position, because there are other options. And the Petrotrin Review Committee, when we met and recommended no such option. I want to be absolutely clear. I made it public what the recommendation.
And therefore, in that context, and that's why it's important that we get these different perspectives, David Abdulah. You said there are other options, but given the present economic circumstances in Trinidad and Tobago, are they viable options to what was done yesterday?
Yes, Fazil, there are, in the sense that while the government's fiscal position is clearly challenged, so the government itself cannot do very much. The country is not bereft of money. There's excess liquidity in the financial sector. In fact, if you look at Sunday's Express, you will see a report saying that there's some, I think, $7 or $8 billion in excess liquidity. That means there's cash in the country. We have in this country over $3 billion US sitting down in local bank accounts in US dollars, which are not being utilized. So there are resources which could be mobilized in a major national effort to get Petrotrin, its oil production ramped up. And let me just say that Dr. Lee and the UNC really have no moral authority on this question, because they were there for 5 years, and Petrotrin's oil production fell during, certainly the last 4 of those 5 years, Petrotrin's oil production fell. So the part of the problem of low oil production is also attributable to successive governments, going way back to the Manning government and so on as well. And so what we recommended as the review committee was actually that there should be a complete separation of the decision making from government, because governments make a mess when they interfere in these state enterprises. And that has been Petrotrin's principle, one Petrotrin's principle.
And David, you alluded to $3 billion excess liquidity and so on. But from a pure business point of view, which is what you're talking about, without political interference, why should other funds be taken to prop up a failing entity?
Because it is failing because of specific problems. And therefore, if you can fix the problems which are fixable, then the company will not fail. And between 2011 and 2015, Petrotrin contributed over $20 billion in tax revenue to this country. Now, that was a very substantial amount of revenue for this country, $20 billion. Only BP and SP probably contributed. And let me make the point too that when you close down the operations as they're planning to do, the GDP, the national income of the country is going to take a huge hit. Because Petrotrin is a company that is over $20 billion. And therefore, when you remove that from the GDP, our national income will go down and our debt to GDP ratio will actually go up. So we are actually going to worsen our credit rating because we still will have to pay the $850 million US debt in August or whenever next year. And the ongoing debt service of the other bond payment of $750 million, which Petrotrin is from its operation, we still have to. So this situation will have gasoline, diesel, LPG, and so on, which means that the government either they don't subsidize the price to will be having to pay the bill to a foreign supplier immediately, as distinct from what happens now when Petrotrin doesn't get that subsidy paid in from NP for years and is owed money by NP. So there are a whole series of issues that have not been sorted out. The issue, for example, of the risk to the economy if we don't have our own supplier of domestic fuel. So if our supplier runs into problems, either natural disaster or some other issue, we now will be at the mercy of a few days of storage in the tank farm. So there are a whole series of questions. What is going to happen to the state of the pension plan, which is close to $10 billion? If that is significantly drawn down, there's a whole investment that is going to be lost. What is going to happen to the financial service sector with workers no longer being able to service their loans to the credit unions or mortgages and other loans to the banks, etc.? There's been no thought being given. SVD and them haven't thought out anything, you know. All SVD is doing is painting by numbers. They see something that they have to try and solve and they say, well, paint by numbers, let us just close it down. They're taking the easy way out rather than trying to find real alternative solutions to the problem. And this government is vigilant and clueless.
And before we conclude, David Abdulah, and indeed this requires more time to have a proper sit down and get the different perspectives. This is obviously a very serious situation at many different levels. But in the same way that you talked about the UNC having no moral authority to comment on this in any way, shape or form based on what you've termed as their type of governance in relation to production levels at Petrotrin, I must ask you the double-edged question, because aren't you also pursuing a political objective because you are the leader of the MSJ, and two, the other objective as a union person of saving jobs no matter what?
Well, okay, let me give you the second one first. The union has a proposal for restructuring Petrotrin, which proposal would have meant increased productivity by the workers, greater effective management responsibility and accountability, and there would have been some employment fallout because the company is padded largely at the top. And in terms of some of the areas which are not involved in the actual production, refining, and distribution of food and its products. And so there would have been some job losses, yes, but it would have been in the context of looking at a company to make it more efficient. So it was not a matter of saving every single job at the expense of losing the company. So let me just make that point. But certainly in the areas of production and refining and in terms of the shipping areas and all of that, there would have been absolutely no need for job losses. In fact, there are vacancies in the operations as we speak. And the second point about the political thing, as you know that I've been making the point that the two traditional parties, so this is not a new point, both the traditional parties have failed this country in terms of leadership. Corruption in and that is why the review committee's recommendations, the point that most fundamental problem is governance. And so rather than dealing with governance, they decide to close off the thing and abdicate the responsibility. And it is also union busting because the model that they want to adopt is for every civil worker to be severed, all 3,500 permanent workers to be severed, and then for people to reapply for 800 jobs in exploration of production and 200 jobs in what is known as terminaling, which is the operations of the tank farms at Point of Care and the shipping area.
David Abdulah, thank you very much for taking the time. I know you're on the move. This obviously is a time when many of the key stakeholders, key personalities involved in this entire development will be dealing with a number of different issues in different fora in Trinidad and Tobago, in various media as well, which we also have to appreciate. We're taking a break now from this particular dialogue because we want to bring in our focus on the family series, which David Abdulah highlighted as well as something that still has value. Whatever the circumstances, there are many issues in Trinidad and Tobago which never change, and one of those remains the focus on our family series, which we are conducting every Wednesday over the last few weeks and will be going on for a while, yet dealing with a number of significant issues. The new school term is almost upon us, starts on Monday. That just adds to the dimension of the issue with petrotrin yesterday. We'll take a break and continue with our dialogue right after this.
Declare war against crime and don't waste any time.